Good late afternoon slash early evening, everybody. The Seahawks had a light practice session today. They didn't go super hard because they've got a game coming up in a couple days here, but we did get some further health updates from the team, from Carroll, from just watching who was actually able to be out there today. So let's run through the news. First, however, the Seahawks did do some roster churn. They added 3 players to their 90-man roster and waived 3 players to make room for them. So we have brought in Montre Braswell, cornerback, Matthew Gotel, nose tackle, and I remember him from last year. I believe he was on the team at some point last year. He never made it, but I remember that name from last year, and wide receiver Justin Marshall. To make room, we have waived running back Wayne Talupapa, which breaks my heart because he is a Washington Husky, a guy that I am very familiar with from the last couple years of college football. Tight end Noah Gindorf, who that's going to disappoint a lot of people because I think there was some excitement around Noah Gindorf. And we have also waived receiver who was injured, Rashawn Henry. If he clears waivers, which I'm sure he will, he gets on our injured reserve list, and we get to kind of earmark him for next year, I guess. But Rashawn Henry was pretty far down the depth chart for receivers on this team because we have so many interesting guys. So, little bit of roster churn, unlikely to be anything hugely significant, but there you go. We're clearing a little bit of stuff out on this 90-man roster. Maybe these guys get to play in the preseason a little bit, and maybe they make a positive impression and can get on the practice squad. I'm not even going to talk about the 53-man with these guys, but hey, there's the practice squad. So that's the roster churn. Let's take a look at some of the things that transpired out there at the VMAC today and what we might be able to learn from it. So we got Greg Bell here talking big props to Mike Jackson, cornerback. He writes this little article here, how Mike Jackson has impressed him more than any other player in Seahawks training camp. Today, he got basically all the reps with the ones across from Tariq Woolen. So when you keep in mind that Trey Brown was back today, Trey Brown was on the practice field and could have taken some of those reps. The fact that Mike Jackson is getting most of the reps opposite Tariq Woolen means that it seems like Jackson has pretty well seized that starting role right now as the starting cornerback opposite Reek. So he's made some real progress this offseason, and we got to be grateful for it because of some of the bad news that we have, which I'll go into later in this video. But seems like Mike Jackson is pretty well locked up that starting job. We got Curtis Crabtree here talking positive things about Jordan Brooks. Been a good first couple days back at walkthroughs for Jordan Brooks, according to Pete Carroll. Not sure yet if he'll get back into practice next week or not. So Carroll was relatively non-committal on his ability to actually start doing teamwork, start doing contact, start doing full speed stuff next week. Obviously, there wasn't a lot of full speed stuff to do today, but again, this is going to be a little bit of a process. Just because Brooks can go through the walkthroughs doesn't mean he'll be able to go through full speed quite yet. But definitely a step in the right direction here. He is continuing to progress. Also continuing to progress would be Jonathan Sutherland, one of our rookie UDFAs. He was a full go in practice today. He got hurt on the final play of yesterday's practice. So the fact that he was out there today means it was clearly not much of anything. So no issues here. Jonathan Sutherland is good. Expect to see a good amount of him on Saturday against the Cowboys because he's one of those guys that is fighting for his roster life. And if he doesn't make the roster, if he plays the way he did against the Vikings, I think he's got a really good chance at the practice squad because there was some exciting stuff to his game. I didn't talk about him that much, but Sutherland actually played a pretty good game against the Vikings. And this is a guy with real special teams gravitas from his time at Penn State. Also back on the practice field was Ken Walker. He got some team reps today. First time he's gotten team reps since the injury. So he is basically at this point 100% full go. I don't expect to see him against the Cowboys because we don't need him. We don't need him to get preseason reps. This is his second year in the NFL. But we maybe get him a little bit in the last week. I don't see any need to push it. I don't see any need to press it. But Ken Walker is just about ready to go. So exciting stuff there. I know that it's been said for weeks now that Ken Walker was going to be back for the regular season, no problem, but it's good to actually see hard evidence of it. So good news there. Trey Brown, like I said a little earlier in this video, was back after sitting out yesterday, so whatever it was that held him out was obviously very insignificant. So honestly, we're getting a lot of guys back today, even though it was a light practice today, not a full going at it hard for 3 hours practice. It was more like a couple of hours, a lot of chill stuff. We got a lot of good news today. So a lot of these guys that we were wondering about, they made their way back today, which is obviously awesome and encouraging because a lot of these guys, like I said, fighting for their roster life on this team. They need these reps. They need these preseason games to try to secure their roster spot. In the area of not so good news, well, first of all, the big one here is obviously the Witherspoon thing, where he's not there yet. He is progressing, but it seems like the timetable has expanded out a little bit on Witherspoon. I'll get to that in a second, though. Joey Blunt, not back yet, has a chance to be back next week, though. And when you consider the fact that he got carted off, that's actually not that bad. If he can get back next week, then I think that positions him pretty well to be able to make the roster or the practice squad. Again, he kind of proved himself last year and on special teams as far as I can tell, so he's probably still in a pretty good spot. Brian Monet, not there yet. He tore his ACL last December, still not there yet. So we're going to continue to wait on that, but that's expected. I mean, he's a big dude who just tore his ACL. I wouldn't expect him to make it back as fast as Jordan Brooks. So it doesn't seem like he'll be ready for week one, though, which some people bandied about. But hopefully he'll be back for the majority of the season. But kind of the big thing in the negative that came out of the updates from Carroll today were that Witherspoon may be ready to do more next week. So there's no opportunity really for him to get back on the field and start doing team stuff until next week, Wednesday or Thursday. So that definitely has to run the timetable out a little bit, because if he's not ready to do more until next week, even if he is ready by next Wednesday, who knows if he gets to play in the last preseason game. And if he doesn't get to play in any of the preseason games, then what does that say about his opportunity to get on the field week one in a major role? I don't know. I mean, obviously this guy is super talented. Maybe the best cornerback in this draft. A guy who deserved to go in the top 5, but if he's missing all these practices, Greg Bell has this tweet here, 8 straight missed practices for Witherspoon already, and he's going to miss at least a few more. He's going to end up at like 11 or so. Is that going to just ruin his ability to contribute early on his rookie year? That seems possible, right? Because, again, this is not a situation where he's a veteran and he has a ton of NFL experience and he doesn't really need preseason games. No, he kind of needs it. So I don't know what to expect at this point, but missing significant time during this part of the season. I remember this kind of happened to Rashad Penny as well. His rookie season got upended, and he wasn't really able to do that much because he missed so much of training camp and preseason. In fact, I think he played like 2 drives in his preseason, and it took most of the season for him to actually start being able to play. But this was kind of the bad news from today. Most of it was good news, but Witherspoon not really up to get out there until next week. There was a couple of other minor injury notes that aren't quite as significant, like Nick Bellore hasn't practiced in a couple days, should be back in a few days, so he'll probably miss this preseason game. But you want to talk about the definition of a guy who doesn't need the preseason, who doesn't need training camp, it's Nick Bellore. If there's ever been a guy who doesn't really need preseason and training camp reps, it's got to be Nick Bellore. So not worry about that at all. Sounds like he will be back for the final preseason game if he even needs it. And of course, that being the case, he will be back for the regular season. Remember, the regular season for the Seahawks starts, I believe, on the 10th. I think our first game is on the 10th. It's either the 10th or the 12th. It's right around there, that mid-September area. So we still have a couple of weeks after the last preseason game to get some of these guys back. So there's going to be an opportunity for even a guy like Witherspoon. As much as what I just said about Witherspoon, I do believe it applies. there is plenty of time for him to at least get physically all the way there for the first game. Now, is physically going to be enough? I don't know. But remember, the first game is still more than 3 weeks away, even though we only have these 2 preseason games left. And the other injury note of consideration was Oluwatimi did not do any team drills yet again, which does not bode well for his ability to play against the Cowboys. I'm kind of surprised this injury's gone on as long as it has. And again, this is a guy who would have been in the spotlight in that Cowboys game. If he had played well against the Cowboys, that would have gotten a lot of attention. That would have gotten a lot of people wondering, is this guy really going to start as a rookie? But if he doesn't get out there for these next 2 preseason games, it's a huge uphill battle for him. So that would be a bummer. That would be the other significant bit of bad news from the injury updates. Again, mostly we got players back today. Mostly these guys who have been missing a couple practices or missing a day or two or maybe had an injury yesterday, they were back. But Oluwatimi and Witherspoon, not so much. Those are the two guys that are a little bit frustrating right now, especially because they're rookies and they need this. But that's really about it. Let me know what you guys think down below. There is a Hawks Nest stream tonight. It'll be hosted on my channel and mirrored to his channel. Watch wherever you want to watch or watch in both places. And me and him are going to talk about this upcoming Dallas preseason game in detail. Hope to see you guys there. Go Hawks. And yeah, keep an eye out for the stream tonight.